Pay attention to the people who keep asking you to explain yourself. They almost never stop after the first answer. You think they're trying to understand you, so you explain. They nod. Then comes another question. You answer that one too. Then another. At first, it feels like curiosity. Until you notice something. Every answer creates another reason to defend yourself. Strange, isn't it? If someone already has enough information, why do they still need another explanation? Someone taught you that explaining yourself was maturity. They lied. Because the longer you explain, the less your words matter. Something else has taken their place. They're no longer listening for the truth. They're watching you. Not your logic. Not your evidence. Your certainty. They're watching what happens when it's challenged. How long before you hesitate? How long before you apologize? How long before you start doubting what you already knew was true? And once someone discovers that, the conversation changes. You're no longer explaining what happened. You're revealing what it takes to make you stop trusting yourself. That's the rule nobody warns you about. The first explanation answers a question. Every explanation after that answers a different one. Not, were you right? But, how much pressure does it take before you abandon your own certainty? Most people never notice the moment it happens. Because it doesn't feel like surrender. It feels like maturity. It feels like being reasonable. It feels like keeping the peace. Until one day, you realize your explanations were never changing their mind. They were teaching people exactly where your self-respect begins to negotiate. By the end of this video, you'll understand why emotionally strong people rarely rush to defend themselves. Why some people keep asking for explanations they never intended to accept. And why the habit you've always mistaken for maturity may be the very thing teaching others how to control you. You weren't born over-explaining. Nobody is. Children don't justify who they are. They cry. They laugh. They say no. Then they move on. So where did this habit come from? Your brain has one job: reduce uncertainty. The moment something feels unresolved, it starts searching for a way to close the gap. That's why unanswered messages bother you. Why unfinished conversations replay in your head. Why silence feels louder than words. Your brain mistakes uncertainty for danger, so it reaches for the fastest solution it knows. Explain more. That works. When the problem is confusion, it completely fails. When the problem is intention, there's a difference almost nobody notices. Confused people ask questions to reduce uncertainty. Manipulative people ask questions to increase it. One wants clarity, the other wants movement. They don't care where the conversation goes, as long as you keep moving. Because every new explanation forces you to leave your center. You start rewriting your memory, softening your words, questioning your instincts, editing your reality, until it becomes easier to defend. That's the first thing manipulation steals. Not your confidence, your certainty. And certainty is expensive. Because once you lose it, you'll borrow someone else's. That's where over-explaining is born. Not from weakness, from a brain trying to solve the wrong problem. Let me ask you something. Who decides when you've explained enough? You, or the person asking for another explanation? Think carefully, because your answer tells you exactly who has the authority. How many explanations does an honest person owe? 1, 3, 10? Where does it end? Who decides where it ends? Let's change the situation. Your boss asks why you made a decision. You explain. He asks again. So you explain again. At what point did you stop explaining your decision? and start asking for permission to keep it. Now your partner. They ask, "Why did you say that?" You answer, "I still don't understand." So, you answer differently. That still doesn't make sense. One more explanation. One more defense. One more attempt to finally be understood. Here's my question. Did they need another explanation? Or did you need them to accept the one you already gave? Parents do it. Friends do it. Strangers online do it. Different faces. Same pattern. Every new explanation quietly moves one thing. Authority. Not the authority to speak. The authority to decide when your own answer is enough. Here's another question. Why are you working so hard? To convince someone who has already decided your first answer wasn't enough. Who gave them that job? You or them? Watch what happens next. The conversation slowly stops being about facts. Now you're defending your memory. Then your intentions. Then your character. Until eventually, you forget what you're defending and become obsessed with whether you're believed. That's the exchange nobody notices. You think you're gaining understanding. You're actually trading certainty for acceptance. And here's the question I want to leave with you. If someone keeps demanding another explanation after you've already answered honestly, are they searching for the truth? Or are they waiting to see how many pieces of yourself you'll hand over before you finally stop? Because the person asking for one more explanation usually isn't looking for clarity. They're checking whether you'll keep surrendering. Don't answer this out loud. Just answer it honestly. Who were you seeing while I was asking those questions? Don't tell the story. Don't explain it. Just go to the comments and write one word. Remembered. Nothing else. I'll know exactly what you mean. It almost never happens in the first minute. That's why most people miss it. The conversation begins normally. You answer. You're calm. Certain. You know what happened. You know what you meant. Then something changes. Not in them. In you. You notice yourself searching for better words. Then, softer words. Then, safer words. You stop saying what happened and start saying what they might accept. Listen carefully. That's the moment everything changes. Not because you lost the argument, because you lost your center. The first explanation came from certainty. The second came from patience. The third came from fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of looking guilty. Fear of losing the relationship. Fear of being seen as the bad person. And once fear enters the conversation, certainty quietly leaves. This is why some people never stop asking questions. Not because they're collecting information, because they're waiting for the transition. The moment your confidence turns into compliance. The moment your memory turns into negotiation. The moment you stop saying, "This is what happened," and start saying, "Maybe I'm remembering it wrong." That's the victory they were waiting for. Not your explanation, your hesitation. Epictetus saw this long before modern psychology gave it a name. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Think about what he's really saying. If your peace depends on correcting every false opinion, then your peace no longer belongs to you. It belongs to whoever misunderstands you. The person who must always be understood can always be controlled, because all someone has to do is refuse to understand. And that's why over-explaining becomes a prison. Not because you keep talking, because every explanation quietly moves you further away from your own judgment and closer to theirs. The tragedy is, most people don't notice the moment it happens. They only notice the exhaustion afterward, when they walk away thinking, "Why do I suddenly feel guilty?" even though I did nothing wrong, because they weren't defending the truth anymore. They were defending themselves against a standard that was never designed to be satisfied. It happens faster than you realize. A message gets ignored. A strange look crosses someone's face. A reply sounds colder than usual. Nothing has actually happened yet. But inside, something already has. Your mind starts filling in the silence. Maybe they misunderstood me. Maybe I should explain what I meant. Maybe if I say it differently. Notice something. Nobody asked for another explanation. Not yet. The conversation inside your own head started first. That's the part almost everyone misses. You don't always explain yourself because someone demands it. Sometimes you explain yourself because silence makes you uncomfortable. And an uncomfortable mind will do almost anything to make uncertainty disappear, even if it costs you your peace. Silence is strange. It gives you nothing to fight, nothing to fix, nothing to persuade. It simply waits. And while it waits, your imagination gets to work. It invents rejection. It invents disappointment. It invents disapproval. It invents endings that don't even exist yet. So you speak, not because you've discovered something important to say, because saying something feels better than sitting with not knowing. That's the trap. You think you're calming the situation. You're actually calming yourself. For a moment, the explanation isn't solving the relationship. It's acting like medicine for your anxiety. And like most medicine that only hides the symptoms, the relief doesn't last. A few minutes later, you need another explanation. Then another. Not because the other person changed, because the anxiety came back. That's why this habit is so difficult to break. You're not fighting words. You're fighting discomfort. And discomfort has a convincing voice. It whispers, "Just explain one more time. Then you'll feel better." Sometimes you do, for a few minutes, until the silence returns. That's the realization that changes everything. You weren't explaining yourself to them. You were comforting yourself. The other person just happened to be listening. The day you stop treating silence like an emergency is the day explanations stop feeling like a necessity. Because peace was never waiting at the end of one more sentence. It was waiting on the other side of your willingness to leave a conversation unfinished. From this moment on, you're probably going to catch yourself right before you start explaining yourself again. Not after, right before. When that moment comes, don't judge yourself. Just notice it. Because that's the moment you've never noticed before. And if this conversation has already changed the way you'll handle that moment, share it with someone who still believes one more explanation will finally make everything okay. They may not realize it yet, but they might be one conversation away from needing to hear this. There comes a moment, so small, most people never notice it. It lasts only a few seconds. No one else can see it. But almost every explanation you've ever regretted began there. Someone questions you. You feel the urge to answer. Then, without realizing it, your mind arrives at a fork in the road. One path says, clarify. The other whispers, defend yourself. From the outside, they sound almost identical. Inside, they couldn't be more different. Clarifying comes from certainty. You know what's true. You say it once. Then you leave it where it belongs. With the other person, defending is different. Defending doesn't stop. When the truth has been spoken, it stops. Only when the anxiety does. That's why one explanation turns into five. Not because the facts changed, because your emotional state did. So how do you know which road you're standing on? Not by listening to your words, by listening to your motive. Right before you explain, pause, just for a second, and ask yourself something most people never do. Do they actually want to understand me? Or do I just want them to? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, don't run from it. Ask another. Have I already answered this honestly once? If you have, another explanation probably isn't creating clarity. It's feeding a conversation that no longer deserves your certainty. Then comes the hardest question, the one almost nobody wants to ask. Am I trying to inform them or rescue the way they see me? That question changes everything, because the moment you realize you're no longer protecting the truth, you're protecting your image, the urge to keep talking begins to lose its grip. Something remarkable happens after that. You stop treating every misunderstanding like a crisis. You stop chasing agreement, as if agreement were proof that you were right. And slowly, almost without noticing, you begin trusting your own judgment again. Not because people stopped questioning you, because their questions stopped deciding who you were. That's the difference between clarifying and defending. One ends with the truth. The other never ends. Because fear is never fully convinced. But certainty doesn't need endless witnesses. It only needs the courage to stand without them. And that is the moment everything changes. By now, I hope you can see that this was never really about explaining yourself. It was about something much quieter, something far more expensive, trusting your own judgment. Even when someone else refuses to, there will always be moments when an explanation is the right thing to do. A healthy relationship deserves clarity. An honest mistake deserves ownership. A sincere question deserves an honest answer. Wisdom isn't refusing to explain. Wisdom is recognizing the moment an explanation has stopped serving the truth and started serving your fear. That's a line most people never learn to see, which is why they spend years trying to earn peace from people who were never offering it. Nearly 3,000 years ago, King Solomon observed something that many people spend a lifetime discovering. He wrote, "When words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent." Think about that for a moment. Solomon isn't telling you to speak less because words are dangerous. He's reminding you that wisdom isn't measured by how much you can defend yourself, but by knowing when another explanation no longer serves the truth. Remember this: one explanation can create understanding. The 10th explanation usually reveals something else. Not honesty, need, not clarity, dependence, not confidence, a quiet hope that someone else's approval will finally let you believe yourself. But the strongest people don't build peace that way. They understand something most of us spend years learning. The people who genuinely want to understand you rarely need endless proof. And the people who demand endless proof usually aren't searching for understanding. They're searching for another explanation. Then another, and another. Because no answer was ever going to satisfy a question that was never asked in good faith. The day you stop trying to convince those people, something unexpected happens. Your words become fewer, but they become heavier. You stop speaking to control what other people think, and start speaking only when your words actually have something to add. Ironically, that's when people begin listening more carefully. Not because you became louder, because you finally stopped negotiating the value of your own voice. So the next time someone asks you to explain yourself, pause, not to find better words, to ask yourself a better question. Am I clarifying the truth, or trying to rescue the way I'm being seen? The answer to that question may change more than the conversation. It may change the relationship you have with yourself. Be careful though. The moment you stop explaining yourself, not everyone will welcome it. Some people become curious, others become frustrated, a few become unexpectedly angry. And that reaction isn't random. It's psychological. There's a reason silence unsettles some people far more than another explanation ever could. I break down exactly why that happens, and how to recognize it before it pulls you back into old habits. In the video that's on your screen now, watch it next. Because once you understand that pattern, you'll never hear another demand for an explanation the same way again.